So you're thinking about moving to Atlanta, but after this list, maybe not. And I'm really joking, like every place has its own kind of, features and flaws. And usually they're the same thing. What one person loves is not so appealing to someone else. And so if you want to know like the things that really get on my nerves or might get on your nerves, and could potentially be a deal breaker and a reason you don't move here, then you're going to want to stick around for that, because that's what I'm going to go through here in a minute, and we're going to get after it right now. Hey, if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about eating, sleeping, working, playing, the good and the bad of living in Atlanta, Georgia, well then subscribe below and ring that bell for notifications so you can be the first to know of the current market here in Atlanta. My name is Denny, and the team and I get calls each and every day from people just like you looking to make the move to Atlanta, and we absolutely love it. So whether you move in next week, next year, or anytime in between, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, even schedule a Zoom. Be happy to help you make a smooth move to Atlanta. As I mentioned in this video, we're going to talk about some things that maybe might be deal breakers and reasons you might not want to live here. Personally, having lived all over the country, I was born and raised in Augusta, Georgia, spent most of my 20s here in Atlanta, have lived in New York City, LA, Santa Monica area, Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, and back to Atlanta. Now, first as a young man, now married, 4 young children. And so that's the perspective from which I want to approach this video. And really my goal, as I mentioned, is that there's some things that are pros for one person, cons for someone else. So I'm going to talk about some things that might be deal breakers for you and have you looking elsewhere. And by the way, if you do decide to move somewhere else, we have partners, very close partners all around the country, a lot of which run these or host these YouTube channels about living in those markets. We'd be glad to hook you up with someone that we know and we trust to do a great job regardless of where you land. Now, I am a little biased. I hope you land here, but I don't want you to get here and realize you made a mistake. So let's get started. First on the list, and obvious to most people, is the heat. It is called Hot Atlanta for a reason. It does get very, very hot. Not as bad as like a Houston or even a Dallas. And I did videos on each of those cities individually, and you might want to check those out if you haven't. But it does get hot. There is there's a nice fall and a nice spring, mild winter, but the summers are blazing hot. The June, July, August, it's going to be a bear. And so if you just can't ever stand having hot weather, well, then you're not going to want to live here in Atlanta, because the summer times for sure are going to get hot. I personally like it because that gives you an opportunity to go to the lake or to get outdoors, or, most people are like, why would you get outdoors? Why don't you stay indoors? There's lots of indoor activities too that you can enjoy when it's too hot outside. But there are some things that I just would rather do when it was blazing hot, whether that's sports, outdoors, lake life, going skiing, doing a lot of those fun things. And so we can take the kids down to like a park and let them play in the fountain, or take them to a water park, do that kind of stuff. And so there are some things that you can only do when it's really hot, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to do that here in Atlanta. Next on the list is one that I hate. I mean, it drives me mad, and that is the bugs. Yes, the bugs. And there's a couple of them that you're going to want to look out for. One is mosquitoes. Like, they all kind of go away in the winter, but as soon as it starts to heat up outside, the bugs come out in full force. And mosquitoes are one that are hard for me, because I think it's type O blood types that have the worst. Like, my wife can be with me and they don't even go near her. It doesn't matter if she has repellent on or not. I can cover myself in bug repellent and they're still going to have a feeding frenzy and I'm going to look like I got hit but like a dartboard. So there is a solution. So you can get, I think it's called a Dynatrap, the one we have, but there's a lot of these that you can, I think for 60, 70 bucks. It's a combination of a light and a fan, and it literally attracts all the mosquitoes from an acre or two around, and it just sucks them into this trap. And so that is like, it runs nonstop around our house in those months. But mosquitoes are definitely something that you're going to have to look out for. The spiders, yes, spiders. I mean, oh, like they're so gross. They're not, I've never seen a lethal spider. There are some, you don't have to really worry about that. But there's these thing called Joro spiders, and they a couple of years ago they ended up here on a cargo ship from Asia, and they look crazier or scarier than they actually are, but they just kind of go wild. They're everywhere, and you have to spray for them. When they all kind of show up, I run around, I spray them all and kill them. And then like a week or two later, I come back and I do it again. And after one or two of those, like around the house, at least they're gone. But then when you go to other places out on like trails or hiking or in the greenway, things of that nature, well, then they're gonna be around. And for the most part, they're just in the trees or in places where they don't bother you. But if you can't stand the sight of them, you're not gonna like it. The next, cockroaches. Yes, there are roaches, and there's all of these bugs, not most, all of these bugs can really, if you just have your house, we have what's called Earth Conscious Pest Control. It's a safe for your kids and pets, and we have an annual treatment. It's like $350, and they'll come out as many times as you want. But we have them come out a couple of times a year, but it's especially when the bug season comes. But cockroaches are one where you're going to want to make sure that you get your house treated for all of these. But if you can't stand the sight of a cockroach, then you're not going to want to be here. I'm the one, my kids will kill them. My wife won't go near them, but I'm always the one that has to clean them up and get rid of them. So cockroaches, ants are going to be a thing as well. So, as long as your house is treated, they stay out of your house. But if your house isn't treated, everyone's got a trash can. My kids, they leave crumbs everywhere. And while we get our house cleaned every week, ants are looking for food. And so ants are going to be a thing. We talked about the mosquitoes, the spiders, ants. There's one I almost forgot. And this isn't a bug, but there are snakes. Yes, snakes. On occasion, we have found them around the house, not the deadly ones around the house, but there are snakes. We do live with woods. And if you get out in the forest, there's going to be snakes out there too. So I steer clear. In 43 years, I've never had an issue with the snake. My family, nobody ever has, but we've definitely seen plenty of them, and they are out and about. And so if any of those things are a deal killer, well, then you're going to want to avoid Atlanta. Hopefully not, because there's a lot of redeeming qualities. That takes us to number 3 on my list, and that is suburban sprawl. See, there's not really, like, if you live in an area that butts up against the coast, you can't build homes out in the ocean, or butts up against the mountains, which we do have North Georgia mountains, but it's not that close to Atlanta. In terms of like, it takes you at least an hour and a half from downtown Atlanta, maybe even a little bit more to hit the base of the mountains. And so for now, it just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and spreading out further and further and further. So unlike a New York City or a Chicago where everything goes up, here, everything goes out. So if you want to throw a dart, if you think you're in the country, it'll be a suburb shortly. And if you think you're in the suburb, it'll be a city in no time. It just kind of keeps on spreading out. Now that does help with affordability, and there are some benefits to suburban sprawl. But if you're looking for that, kind of city downtown living, you can move into the city. But it is just kind of keeps on going and going, which leads me to another challenge. Number 4 on our list would be public transportation. Unlike a New York or Chicago where you could just hop on a train and get just about anywhere you wanted to go and you could live without a car, that doesn't happen here. The public transportation system, the MARTA, it does north, south, east, west, but unless you live in really close proximity to one of those stations, you're not going to be using the public transportation system to live. Independently from having a vehicle. You're gonna need one. And so with that means that you're gonna very much be car dependent. And if you're coming from one of those cities where you haven't ever had to have a car, you're going to want to factor that into your budget, or at least take that into consideration, because again, you can get to some main, arteries, but you're probably not going to be able to live your life without a vehicle. So next on the list is kind of goes hand in hand with the public transportation and being car dependent, and that's the traffic. Because Atlanta is car dependent or vehicle dependent, there's lots of trucks and SUVs, so they're not necessarily cars, but because public transportation isn't great and it is car dependent, traffic. Did I say traffic? I mean, suburban sprawl, you would think, well, it's spreading out, right? Population density. No, it's bad. Like, you can't just get easily from one place to the other, even if it's only like 5 or 10 miles. Like on a good day, that might be 20 minutes. And on a bad day, that might be an hour. And so people outside the perimeter of 285, they don't venture in very much. And if you're in, you don't venture out very much. Those major intersections around 285, 75, 85, 420, these are all interstates and main highways. Those things get way clogged up during rush hour, and rush hour seems to be extending from just the morning and the late afternoon into all day, Monday through Friday, and on some of the weekends. And so traffic is an issue in and around Atlanta. You have to have a car, so you're going to have to deal with traffic unless your whole life is just in your local area, which with remote working and people not having to go into the office, there's a lot less than there used to be, but traffic is still going to be way up there on the list of things that someone might not want to deal with if they're going to be, living in Atlanta. And that's something that you cannot avoid, at least not always. You can try to get around it a lot of times, but you're going to have to deal with some traffic if you're going to live in Atlanta. So number 6 on our list is going to be diversity. And listen, I'm giving you a list. This isn't necessarily the things that discourage me, but they could discourage someone. I love that Atlanta is a melting pot, and there's people from all walks of life that have come here. We've got the busiest airport in the world, so lots of international people, lots of immigrants, Black, white, male, female, gay, straight, everything in between, young, old, you name it. Atlanta's full of it, and there's a lot of it. I'd have to go back and look, but and it's a little bit different. The further in the city and the suburbs have some different demographics, but Atlanta's probably one of the top LGBT communities, probably around 4 to 5% of the population self-identifies as homosexual, gay, lesbian, and whatnot. The inner city inside the perimeter used to be more Black, and it's actually there's been a move from the inner city to some of the suburbs from the Black population, and some of the white population has moved from the suburbs into the city. So there's actually not as big of a divide as there used to be. And there's a decent Hispanic or Latino population or Spanish speaking population here as well. And then there's a large Asian, which includes Indian population in Atlanta as well. And so it's a really diverse place to live, which I love. But if you're someone who's just looking to be surrounded by people just like you, well, you're probably going to need to look somewhere else, because this is the melting pot. There's very few places in America that has a more diverse population than Atlanta. And that's something that I love, but I'll let you make that decision. I could have mentioned this earlier with the heat, but next we're going to talk about the humidity. It's like a wet blanket, and a hot, wet blanket at that. I mean, think of like steam room, sweat dripping, hot. So if you have to wear a suit and a tie, if you're trying to, ladies, if you're trying to keep the humidity out of your hair, keep your hair right, you're gonna have to work a little bit harder here than you would in other places, because there's just, like I said, June, July, August, it's just humid, and humidity makes everything hotter. It makes everything colder. 30 degrees in Atlanta feels a lot colder than 30 degrees in Chicago. I'm speaking from personal experience. 80 degrees in Atlanta feels a whole lot hotter than 80 degrees in LA. And so there's a big difference between a humid versus a dry climate, and it is really humid here in Atlanta. And so that's something that you need to consider and you're going to have to contend with if you're going to live here. Next, and I mean this sincerely, I think it's 8 on the list, is friendly people. Yeah, friendly people. If I've lived in New York, I've lived in Chicago, if you've lived in one of these areas, and it's mostly the Northeast, I found the Midwest to be fairly friendly too, but there's nothing like Southern charm. If you've lived in an area where people respected their personal space and you really didn't talk to strangers and you kind of kept to yourself and you stayed in your own lane and you did your own thing, well, that ain't here. Because everyone waves to everyone, everyone says hello to everyone, everyone talks to their neighbors, everyone engages with everyone. I'm talking to people at the coffee shop, at the grocery store, at the gas station, even just out on a walk and a passerby. My kids, they pet every single dog. If you're within a mile of my daughter, Delilah, she's running up to your dog. She's petting your dog. We're sitting there talking. We become best friends. I'm inviting you to church. Like, it's all, I'm telling you, if you're not into friendly people, well, then you don't need to live in Atlanta. And I think that there's a lot of, confusion about the culture. But I'm telling you, in the city, in the suburbs, black, white, everywhere in between, it don't matter. We talk to everybody and everyone's friendly. Of course, we have our own negative, like the crime, and there's bad people everywhere. But I'm talking about as a general rule of thumb, you're not really going to be able to get out much without someone saying hey to you or trying to engage you in a conversation or calling you saying yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, or darling, or sweetheart, or honey, or sugar, or something. So if you don't like that, you don't want to be here. Number 9 on the list is the political environment. Now, if you have come from a place that's really, really red, I mean, it is Republican, conservative, diehard, and you're looking to be surrounded with people who just think about that or just vote that way and have that, you're probably going to want to, at minimum, be in the suburbs of Atlanta and probably some of the more rural or secondary markets. Like a place like Augusta. Augusta is even like, I'd say Richmond County is blue and Columbia County is red. In Atlanta, it's not so cut and dry. And if you've come from New York or Chicago or an area, Chicago's a good example. In Chicago, the city's very blue. The rest of Illinois, the state's very red. In Georgia, Atlanta, the city, has historically been very blue. And the suburbs have been very red. But there's this, I think I mentioned that the black population is moving to the suburbs, the white population is moving to the city. Lately, it's flip-flopped back and forth. I mean, if you go back and look at the history of Georgia and their voting for the president, it flip-flops back and forth. Although up until 2000, there'd been a long streak of red. If you look at the governor, same thing, flip-flop back and forth, but there's been a pretty long streak of red in the governor's office. The Senate right now, both blue. They're both Democrats, which I did not expect. That was a surprise, I think, to everyone. I think so is the presidential, it going blue at the last minute. And I'm not here to tell you what to like or not, or how to vote or how to, I don't care. I mean, as a Jesus follower, I am called to love all people. All people are my neighbor. And he wants us to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I really do. I was the kid in high school. My wife was the same way, where I was friends with the nerds, the jocks, the band, the black, white, Indian. It don't matter to me. I was friends with everybody, and I've still been that way as an adult. But if that's important to you, you do need to understand that Georgia somewhat become a flip-flopper. It depends on the race. It depends on the area. It depends on the candidate. It depends on a lot of factors, and it could go either way. So be the change you want to see when you get here. So that, I think, was number 9, and we're going to round it off. Number 10, last but not least, is the growth. If you're looking for a slow pace and minimal to no growth in terms of population, and all the things that come with that, well, then this is not the place for you, because Atlanta is booming. I mean, I think 15 or 16% growth between the 2010 and 2020 census. This year right now growing at 1.6% annually, which is extremely fast. The city of Atlanta is growing. The suburbs, the total metro is growing, some of the fastest growing counties in the country. And so that does come with challenges that we talked about, like traffic, but it also comes with a strong economy, a strong job market, a reduction in poverty, increase in income. Like all of those things are really positive factors with growth. But if you don't like growth, you don't want to be here, because Google, Apple, Facebook, Rivian is doing a manufacturing facility, which is an electronic vehicle. Kia is manufacturing, UPS, Home Depot, Coca-Cola, a booming tech industry, biomedical industry, healthcare industry, manufacturing, service industry, all of that stuff is literally booming. Atlanta is booming. And so if you're not into growth, you don't want to be here. And I know that sounds like that's a positive, but it could be a negative to someone. If you're just looking to kind of move out into the middle of nowhere and be surrounded by no one, this is not the place to be, because it's one of the fastest growing cities, counties, metropolitan areas in the country. And that is not changing anytime soon. It's actually starting to ramp up even more and more and more. People from California, New York, Chicago, the Midwest, Northeast, Northwest, West Coast, all of it, even Texas, everyone's moving to Georgia, it feels like. But these are definitely some reasons that you might not want to move here, or that would give you pause. And so I wanted to share that with you in case one of those was just a complete deal killer. And obviously everyone's situation is different. Hey, listen, if you got value out of this video, smash that like button for me. And in the comments below, if you have any other questions, comments, anything that I missed or something you think I got wrong, I know you're going to hold me accountable there. You always do. We're very grateful for all of our viewers and subscribers. Subscribe below, ring the bell so you get notified when we release new videos. And then of course, if you're moving next week, next year, anytime in between, call, text, email, Zoom, send the carrier pigeon, whatever works for you. And we'd be happy to help you make a smooth move to Atlanta. Now, until I see you in person, hopefully I'll see you on the next episode.